All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lasting Learning Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a good one, and I know that because we've got a guy that's going to be speaking right to me. Got a guy here who, on the surface, when you hear the resume, when you hear the background, you're going to be a little confused. But trust me, it's going to be epic. It's going to be life-saving, destiny-changing.
Oh, listen to you.
Yeah, right? Today we got a guy
No pressure.
Today we got a guy on who has worked with some of the most famous people on the planet. He's worked with Jerry Seinfeld and Jay Leno, and you name the comedian, he's worked with
Dennis Miller, Ron White, Jeff Foxworthy, Rosie O'Donnell, Ellen DeGeneres, Paula Poundstone, Adam Sandler.
There you go. So like I said, he has been side by side some of the greats. And today is no exception because he's here with me.
Oh, yeah.
He's absolutely amazing. He's got quite the resume. Yet at the same time, you're going to hear in his story that he has dealt with some of the same demons that I have dealt with and some of you have dealt with. And we're going to talk through that journey a little bit and talk about the mission he's on today. So today, we got Frank King joining us, and he is just going to drop some epic truth and just tell his story. So, Frank, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely, David. You know what I forgot to mention in our pre-show conversation? I don't know if you're aware of this, but 8 out of 10 suicides in the U.S. at this point are men, age 45, 54. And we got a book coming out March 1st on men's mental health. We got 2 co-authors, women who, one of them went to the Barnes & Noble to find a book on men's mental health because she speaks to and trains first responders, most of them men. So she thought, well, I should go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, get a book, and then I could pass it out. Nothing specific on men's mental health. So before I forget, well, that's coming out March 1st. I'll give you the website address so you can put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. We'll add all of that in.
And so
Frank, who are you? Tell people who you are that might not have heard of you before.
Well, I'm a comedian. I started comedy in the day after Christmas, 1985. And I was on the road with my lovely girlfriend, now my wife, for 2,629 nights in a row, nonstop, no home. Just comedy club to comedy club, hotel to hotel for 7 years and change. And that's when I worked with Seinfeld and, Kevin James and all those other people, David Spade. And after I got done on the road, as the comedy thing crashed, kind of burned in 95, 94, 95, went to work at a radio station in Raleigh, North Carolina, my old hometown, came triumphantly home, #1 rock and roll morning show in Raleigh, which I drove to #6 in 18 months and got fired. And, oh, by the way, on that road trip, that's when I began writing jokes for Leno. Because back in the day when he was just a guest host, Johnny would say, I'm taking next week off, which meant Leno was responsible for 4 nights, 18 jokes a night in a monologue. So we had a bunch of us guys and gals out there writing jokes on spec. I was turning in 12 to 24 jokes a day on whatever news was happening. Made the jump, sorry about the German Shepherd whining in the background, made the jump from the club comedy to corporate comedy in 95, because my jokes had always been very clean, and so that was the natural progression. Club work at a certain age becomes, I've got friends who are my age are still working clubs, and I'm like, dude, you're doing it wrong, because things haven't changed, Dave. The audience was like in their mid-20s when I was starting out in 84, 85, and they're still in their mid-20s. Yeah, unless you're going to, be Mr. Saturday Night working nursing homes, you're not going to be talking to your age group. So then I did the corporate comedy thing until the recession. And when the recession hit, speaking business dropped off 80%. We lost everything in a bankruptcy, and that's when I learned I could tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Obviously, spoiler alert, I didn't pull the trigger. A friend of mine came up to me after a keynote one day because he'd never heard me say that. And he goes, hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger? I go, hey, man, could you try to sound a little less disappointed? So then the meeting planner said to me, Frank, comedy's great, but we can't pay that kind of money just to be funny anymore. We need some takeaways, some content. You teach my audience something. And I'm like, oh my God. And I always wanted to do that, Dave, but I could never figure out what the hell I had to, to teach anybody. So after the near suicide attempt, realizing it runs in my family, grandmother died by suicide, great aunt died by suicide. My mother found my grandmother. My mother and I found my great aunt, and I was 4 years old. I think my mother committed suicide slowly with cigarettes and alcohol. And of course, I came so close. I thought, well, that's what I need to be talking about, suicide prevention. And so I thought, my wife suggested do a TED Talk. So I applied for my first TEDx, and I got it. And that was when 2014. I was 52 years old, and I came out as depressed and suicidal for the first time ever in that TEDx talk. Nobody knew. My family, my wife, my friends. You know how people with mental illness are very good actors. There's a reason I have a Screen Actors Guild card. So I came at my wife's about to hit play when it posted. And I said, look, before you hit play and watch that YouTube video of me on the TEDx, I need to tell you about half a dozen things you're going to learn here real soon. I didn't want her to, be sitting there watching and hearing this stuff for the first time. So that's how I got into made the switch from a funny speaker to a speaker who's funny, because I still use the humor in the suicide prevention keynote, because it's a difficult subject. And I do the spoiler alert joke and the joke about my friend coming up. There's stories about me that are funny. I had a meeting planner say to me one time, you're going to be doing the keynote. I said, what do you want me to cover? Now, she knows I put a gun in my mouth. She goes, just give me some bullet points. I'll let that hang in the air. She's like, oh my God. I can't. I go, relax, Michelle. So that's kind of where I am today. And now I go around the country, colleges, associations, corporations, speaking on suicide prevention generally as a workplace health and safety issue.
Yeah. That's an amazing story. I'm sure there are people that are listening to this and people that have heard you before that can't quite connect the dots. They hear the story of this guy who is out there. I almost said killing it, but you know what I mean.
That's right.
Who's out there doing what they wish they could do, rubbing shoulders with some of the greatest people, traveling the country, and in their mind, it's the life. It's the place they want to be.
Yeah.
And yet you got to this place where you said, I'm willing to give it all up. I mean, do you think it's all genetic, or was there more going on?
Well, I believe a big slice of it's genetic, because it's called generational depression and suicide. It runs in my family. As I mentioned, my grandmother, my great aunt, my mother. It's also situational. I was that close to my great aunt's suicide at age 4, and that ups the chances that you'll take your own life at some point. And then situational in that I was cranking along pretty good. I would get depressed even at good times, but it always worried me. What's going to happen when I get this depressed and it's bad times? And that's what happened. It was a perfect storm of the bankruptcy, the speaking business dropping off, and the recession. And that was the worst. That was the perfect storm. And I found out what happens when you. But the good news is 2 things. The reason I got into comedy, and my fourth TED Talk is called Suicide, the Secret of My Success. Because I married my high school sweetheart, a wonderful woman, but we didn't belong together. I was selling insurance, great business, but not for me. And I wasn't doing stand-up. And I realized, you know what? If I don't change something, I'm going to kill myself. Second thought was, hey, what have I got to lose? I can quit my job, divorce my wife, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, hell, I can still kill myself. And that's one of the reasons. The reason I didn't pull the trigger in 2010 is I had a life insurance policy for $1 million. The problem is you have to have it 24 months before you pull the trigger. I had it 22 months, so I had to wait 2 months and a day. And because suicide's always on the menu for me, I was able to wait, knowing that the pain was coming to an end. Because that's something, Dave, a lot of people don't understand. They say to me, why did so-and-so want to kill himself? Well, chances are so-and-so did not want to kill himself or herself. They just wanted to end the pain. So knowing in 2 months and a day I could end the pain allowed me to live that 2 months and wait for the insurance to be in full force, so my wife would be brokenhearted, wouldn't be broke. That makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. At least it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
There might be others out there that don't quite resonate with this. And I think that's part of the story I want to take as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said when you were going through your bio and your intro is that it was about 5 years ago that you came out as depressed. And I love that term, coming out, because nowadays we hear when people come out, we think it's a different connotation, but in reality, it's owning up to who you are on the inside and removing that facade, removing that cover and saying, no, this is really who I am. And I relate to that because about a year ago, I came out the same way and said, I'm dealing with depression. It's not
Oh,
sadness. It's not, hey, I get
yeah,
sad
the
sometimes. Everybody
blues.
gets sad sometimes. You know, it's coming out and saying, no, deep inside, even when I'm smiling and I'm laughing and I'm telling a joke, I'm still struggling
Yeah,
with this. And there is power in coming out and owning it and telling your
yeah.
story.
And by doing that with those you love, care about you, you begin to form. You can be honest with the people around you. Makes it easier to cope. You're not hiding anything. My workout partner is a retired veterinarian. We're pumping iron, and he said to me, "How you doing?" I go, "I'm wretchedly depressed," because he's not going to judge. He goes, "Well, tell me what that looks like." I said, "Well, remember when you're 18 and the guy, every other thought was about sex?" He goes, "Yeah. What's your every other thought about?" "Going back to bed, watching Netflix, binge watching." So it's important you have people in your life who, when you say things like that, or I had thoughts of suicide, that doesn't freak them out. They just listen. They want to, it's very important. People ask me, "I got a friend who's depressed. What should I say?" Don't say anything. Just listen. So
That's good. Do you have people that confront you and say, you're not really depressed? If you were really depressed, you wouldn't be making light of it. You wouldn't be funny. You wouldn't still be laughing.
you wouldn't be
Um,
successful.
exactly. I mean, do you hear that commentary
Yeah.
and that criticism?
Yeah. You know what it is, Dave, is the double-edged sword of being high functioning and mentally ill. Because people say, "Oh, no, not you. No, no." And they would even say to me, "Well, how do you know you're suicidal?" I've never actually been diagnosed as depressed or suicidal. I just know what the symptoms are. I know it runs in the family. Know what it feels like. How do you know you're suicidal? Well, the aftertaste of gun oil is a big tip. Usually backs them up a little bit. But yeah, I get challenged. And sometimes, Dave, I got to tell you, sometimes I do feel a little guilty about saying I'm depressed because I have a good life. Lovely wife, wonderful animals. I do what I love for a living. So I feel a little bit, embarrassed that, but again, for me and people like me, perhaps for you, it's not situational. It's not, it wasn't necessarily the bankruptcy that triggered it, or the fall off in speaking business that triggered it. But those things, that's not the source of the depression, thoughts of suicide. My mind just, I think I said in one of the TED Talks, my car broke down. I had three thoughts unbidden: get it fixed, buy a new, and I could just kill myself. And the amazing thing about that is almost every time I speak, somebody, or more than one somebody, comes up afterwards. They've got the same condition. They had no idea it had a name. They thought they were just some kind of freak. And hopefully I've steered them just far enough off the path to suicide they'll live a normal life. That's kind of my job. I'm like George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what people's lives would be like if I weren't there to speak and let them know they're not alone.
I think that's good, and I think it's important for people to realize that they're first of all, they're not alone, and that this is something that a lot of people struggle with. People that you would never ever
No.
suspect and expect, because we all cope with this in our own way. Some people cope by actually pulling the trigger, and in their
Yep.
mind, that's the ultimate medicinal cure.
Pain's gone.
Absolutely. It is a pain reliever. Other people cope by therapy. Some cope by Lexapro. Some cope by
Yeah.
beer. Some
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
relationships, by laughter, by whatever. There are a variety of people out there that are dealing with this thing that is an internal, it's an internal struggle that externally looks different on every single person. I mean, you can't just walk down the street and say, yeah, they're depressed. Yeah, they're depressed. Or actually, you probably can, because the statistics are out there. You could probably do that
Yeah.
with fairly good accuracy. But it's difficult to really resonate with the fact that
Yeah.
so many people are struggling. Every once in a while, though, people do come out and they do say, I'm struggling. And they say, I need help. And thank God for those people that pick up the suicide prevention hotline
Yeah.
and call. But there are others that might just mention it casually.
Well,
Or
here's the
they
deal,
might hear
Dave.
this podcast and say, wow, what do I do?
8 out of 10 people who are contemplating suicide, 8 out of 10 are ambivalent. They want somebody to say something. And 90% of people who are considering suicide, 90%, in the last week leading up to the attempt, they give you hints: direct, indirect, verbal, nonverbal, behavioral, in hopes that somebody will notice. And so that's the good news. We can make a difference. We can save a life. We can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here and starting the conversation, because people want someone to start the conversation. Just ask, Are you okay? No, I mean, really, are you okay? Every now and then, Dave, I got to tell you, I like to screw around with normal people. Because what you and I say, people, how you doing? Nah, I'm living the dream. Yeah. Every now and then, I was in Sacramento. I'd done a couple of presentations. I was exhausted. I get in the Uber. Nice young kid in the front seat. He looks. We lock eyes in the rearview mirror. He goes, "Hey man, how you doing?" I go, "I'm depressed and suicidal." And he's driving, thinking. And he goes, "What am I supposed to say to that?" I go, "Do you really want to know?" He goes, "Yeah." So he's supposed to ask me if I have a plan. So a little more silence. He goes, "Do you have a plan?" There's this pause, and he goes, "Does it involve Uber?" Brilliant.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
but
amazing.
every now and then you want it like my workout partner. I can tell him when I'm not, 100% on my game. I don't have to wear my game face in the gym because he understands. He's not going to judge.
So, I mean, what are people supposed to do with that? And let's just talk about me, for example,
Yeah.
because that's what I'm best at, is talking about me.
Yeah.
And people that are listening to this are saying, "Yeah, we know, Dave. You talk about yourself." But I have had some of those dark thoughts. I have
Yeah.
gotten to the place where I've actually had plans laid out,
Sure.
and sometimes, and it's multiple times, and there are multiple things that have triggered those thoughts and those plans to come into place. But there have been times where it has just been, I wonder if anybody will notice. I wonder if anybody will care. I wonder if
Yeah.
anybody will step in to try to stop, or would it truly make things better for everybody if I were gone?
That, by the way, is a misconception that normal people have. You'll hear this. It's a selfish act. And what you just said is actually an unselfish act in the mind of the person who's considering it. Because when I was thinking about it, I'm thinking the world would be better off without me and my wife. I was literally worth more dead than alive. So it's called burdensomeness. You feel the whole world would be better off without you. So it's an unselfish act in the mind of the person who's thinking about it. Now, I can understand how it appears selfish on the outside. But yeah, I mean, won't the world be better off without me?
Right. And I'm a father of 4 amazing kids. I've got a good job. I've got a nice house. On the outside, people look at it and say, wow, if he were to do this, it is completely selfish just because he's just trying to get away. Wants to rid the world. He wants to get rid of all the responsibilities he's supposed to
Yeah.
have, but that's not it. But nobody's actually ever really said those things to me. Nobody's ever really confronted me with their thoughts. And I think part of it is because they hear it and they're like, holy crap, what do I do? They're like that Uber driver. What do I say next?
Yeah. And what can I
And
say the wrong thing?
then what if I'm the reason that he actually does it? I mean,
Yeah.
what advice or suggestions do people have? Would you give to people that hear it from somebody else?
Well, let's back up a bit. They'll go a little farther upstream because people ask me, how do I know somebody's depressed? And this is what I teach in my keynote. It's called QPR: question, persuade, refer. You can tell somebody's depressed generally if they eat too much, can't eat, sleep too much, can't sleep. They let their personal hygiene go. They used to be really nattily dressed and then took care of their hair and their whatever. And when I talk to dentists and I say, listen, if your patient has been taking really good care of their teeth for years and they come in one day and they're kind of shabbily dressed and you realize they've let their dental hygiene go, that may be a signal they're struggling. So, you can spot that. So it's eat too much, can't eat. And they take less joy in social activities than they used to. They begin to withdraw. So the question comes up, what do you say to somebody you believe is depressed? Well, here's what you don't say. I'm sure you heard this. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Choose joy. Have you tried fish oil? Yeah. So what do you say to somebody who's depressed? Well, I'm here for you and mean it. I know you're not crazy, lazy, or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. The good news is, with time and treatment, things will get better. I'll take the time to help you get the treatment. Now, here's the question, Dave, that I have trouble asking myself. I have to practice in the mirror before I go to meet somebody. You have to ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide? Just like that. And if you can't ask that, find somebody who can. And by the way, if you have an inkling, I think he may be going to kill himself, go with your intuition because something may have happened you weren't consciously aware of that led you to that thought. So, if you ask them, let's say you ask them if they're suicidal, but they don't admit it. How do you know? How can you tell? Well, they talk about death and dying, Google death and dying. It appears as a theme in their artwork, music, writing. They're gathering the means. whether it's buying a gun and ammunition or stockpiling pills. They're getting their personal affairs in order. They're giving away prized possessions because they want to make sure those go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. Now, here's a counterintuitive one that's really dangerous. They've been depressed forever. All of a sudden, they're happy for no apparent reason. And you're happy because they're happy. Finally, oh God. Problem is, as you said, you had a plan. They may have chosen time, place, method, and they're happy because they know the pain is finite. So, like my Uber driver friend, what do you do if, what do you say to somebody you believe is, struggling? Oh, you're depressed? Yes. Suicidal thoughts of suicide? Yes. Do you have a plan? If they have a plan, ask them, what is your plan? If it's detailed, and you mentioned this, get them on the phone with the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or nowadays they've got a text line for younger people. Text the word HELP to 741-741. If they won't pick up the phone, you pick up the phone, talk to the volunteer. They'll do their best to, talk the phone into the hands of the person who's struggling. Question always comes up, when do you dial 911? If they're a danger to themselves or others, you got to call the cops. Now, that's going to buy them a 3-day stay in a mental health gated community with no shoestrings or belt, and they're going to be pissed. But I'd rather have them unfriending me on Facebook than dead. So now, there are 2 other questions I would ask that's not in the protocol. Depressed, yes. Suicidal, yes. Plan, yes, but not particularly specific. At that point, I would say, and this applies to people like me with chronic suicidal ideation, are you going to kill yourself? I would say no. Why would I kill myself? Because I'm not going to kill. But you ask them, why are you not? And then the follow-up question I think is most important, Dave, is, well, then tell me why not. So make them give voice. My 4 kids, my lovely wife, I couldn't do it to my animals. Make them give voice. And if you ask me, I would tell you, because I'm George Bailey and it's a wonderful life. And if I kill myself, I take all those people with me because they would never hear me speak and find out they're not alone. So that's what you do. That's how you spot depression, signs of suicide, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. And that's generally what I teach, a much longer version of that. But those are the nuts and bolts of the, if you watch my TED Talks, I always try to give some of those in the talk. So there's learning, there's takeaways for the audience. Because people just, people are generally kind, caring, and they want to help. They just have no clue how. And the word suicide, it's frightening.
It absolutely is. And unfortunately nowadays we're hearing about more and more young people that are getting to this point. And there are some that will say, well, it's just a bunch of kids being copycats, a bunch of kids that are just trying to get notoriety and attention and trying to get celebrity status of some sort. Or it's just kids that are struggling and are desperate to have people notice them. Is it the same protocol, the same advice you would have to regardless of the age of the person?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much those are the signs and symptoms generally. Those are the things you say or don't say. Part of the problem with kids nowadays, they're spending a lot less time with their peers. When I was a kid, we hung out at the mall, we hung out, wherever. Nowadays, since 2012, last study I saw, teenagers are spending 40% less time, face-to-face time, with their peers than prior to 2012. Hanging out at the mall, hanging out at the YMCA. I hung out at the YMCA. They're in their rooms, on their smartphones. Now, they haven't been able to draw a connection between teen major depressive disorder rates, suicide rates, and the smartphone. They can't say for sure there's a connection. Could be connection, could be correlation, could be coincidence, but they're not quite. But what makes me think there's a connection is in 2012, for the first time ever, smartphone ownership in the U.S. passed the 50% mark. 2012, over 50% of people in the U.S. had a smartphone. And I think now it's up in the high 70s or low 80% of it. So, there's something there. We're just not really sure what, we did what's called a digital media addiction keynote for the Michigan secondary school superintendents, principals. We set 80 chairs. We had 156 people. Because the principals want to know about it, the teachers want to know about it, the kids want to know, because they're looking for solutions. Do you lock the phones in the lockers? Do you, what do you do? So yeah, it is a hot topic but unfortunately no solid evidence yet you can connect. But I tell parents, If you're on your smartphone and you're trying to get the kid off the smartphone, I suggest you get a power strip, put it in the parents' room. You plug every device into the power strip at 7 o'clock at night. You turn off the router in the house, and you don't turn any of it back on until 7 o'clock the next morning.
That's good. Practice what you preach, man. I love it. And
yeah,
I like that you're also talking about the fact that we don't have solid evidence. We don't necessarily have correlations and causations and all that. But just like if you are suspecting that somebody might be suicidal, even if you don't have solid evidence, you don't see the plan written out or the will planned out, err on the side of caution. I mean, if we're talking life or death here, err on the side of caution.
Ask.
It's not going to hurt, right?
Ask and be, if you suspect, your inkling, ask and be persistent.
Yeah.
So as I said, if you can't ask it, find somebody who can ask it.
No, that's good. It's good. So it's been 5 or 6 years since you were at that place where you had the gun and the whole 9 yards. Do you feel like you are cured now? Are you fixed?
No, I'm afraid, Dave. I'm afraid it's genetic. It's organic to me. I stopped using the word battle depression because battle implies I can win. I can't. I can tie, survive. I can lose, kill myself. But it's kind of like North and South Korea, kind of an uneasy piece. And so I no longer fight the depression. I try to. There's a martial art called Aikido, and it's all about blending with your opponent's or your partner's energy. If somebody strikes out at you, you get offline and you blend with their energy. And I try to blend with the energy of the depression because it's quite a force rather than fight, bump up against it like this. Kind of go with the energy. So, because I'm going to be dealing with that for the rest of my life. And the suicidal ideation, it's just the way I'm wired. I sit at a railroad. People will tell you, this is a very common story among people with my condition. You're at a railroad crossing and the arms are down. The train's coming. And you're thinking, I could slip around the crossing, the guards. That would do it. Or driving a mountain road and you look down in a ravine, you think that would do it. It's very common. It just the way my mind works. So it's like music running in the background all the time. Every now and then it's louder and then softer, but it's always there. But again, it keeps me alive because I know if things get really shit, I'm about to say a bad word.
It's okay, go ahead. It's all right.
Things get really bad, that's my superpower. I'm going to do a book called Starting the Conversation on Suicide, Life in the Exit Row. And it'll have a picture on the front of a guy on an airplane sitting in the window seat in the exit row, looking out. Because that's where I live. Knowing that at any point, pop, and I'm done.
Do you have happy moments?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm happy more than I'm depressed. My depression used to be a 3-day cycle, happened every couple of months. Go down one day, flatten out the second, up the third. Started taking the Wellbutrin at age 60, should have done it a long time ago. And it shortened it to 2 days, and it stretched out to maybe 3-4 months. So it's kind of like a wheel with a flat spot. It just goes around and boom. And then, and every so often I hit that flat spot and I get depressed. But I'm happy more than I am, rather than sad.
Do you feel like people operate around you on tiptoes? I'll speak for me here. So that coming out moment, if you will, when you start to acknowledge your struggles. Before then, I felt like people were unguarded. They were just real with me and they just lived their lives. But I feel like sometimes now people are extra cautious about what they say, when they say it, how they say it. They want to make sure at all times that I'm okay. I feel like I'm getting that question, are you okay, 1,000 times a day now from anybody and everybody, which at times I'll be honest, it starts to piss me off. I'm like, come on, I am not, that is not my identity. I wanted to share part of me with you, but that's not my identity. I have other things going for me. And it's almost like people are super, super cautious now to give me critical feedback. They don't want to upset me. They don't want to do anything that might impact me in a negative way. And in fact, it almost hurts worse now because I feel like they're not willing to accept who I really am. And they're not willing to really have this real relationship with me. Or it's just, I feel like I've almost been pushed farther away because now I have this stigma. Do you experience that at all?
I think the stigma is real. I'm older than you, so I don't give a, and but there are people who treat me differently, and they do check in a little more often than they used to. Hey, how you doing? And I know they're thinking, I'm sure I crossed their mind, and they thought, I better Facebook message Frank, see how you're doing. I mean, then they go, how are you really doing? I'm really doing, which they should do. I'm really doing fine. But yeah, there is that you run the risk when you come out with whatever you come out with, and they're going to treat you somehow differently. I get together for coffee about once a month with crazy friends. It's a crazy coffee collage, and it could be 2 people, could be 5 people, and we do it so we can take our game face off for an hour and just be mentally ill. The last time we got together, Amy came in. She goes, yeah, somebody jumped off a building to try to kill themselves, like 6 stories. Now they're just a quadriplegic. And we're all like, 6 stories? Man, I would not do it less than 10. Well, maybe 15, because I don't want to walk away from if ordinary, normal people would be like, what are you guys talking about? You can talk about things that would be frightening and disturbing to other human beings. So there is. I can't be 100% myself. Now on stage or on TED Talk, I am, in an effort to destigmatize. Because people have a vision of what mental illness looks like and sounds like, and I'm up there being high functioning, making jokes about it. That changes their perceptions, and then that changes prejudices and perhaps behavior.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there might be some people out there that hear you or hear this and might be thinking, well, you shouldn't be making light of this. You shouldn't be cracking jokes. But in a way, I'm thinking about like religious comics, and because they're religious, they have the free pass. They can make fun of their religion. Or white comics that are able to throw the quote unquote cracker jokes out there.
Yeah, or black
whatever
comics,
the case may be.
Comics, yeah.
Absolutely. But when you do have that credibility to say, no, this is really something I'm dealing with, and I want to release the stigma and normalize it a little bit, I think it does open up the conversation, even if it's people that then start saying, can you believe he said that? And then now the conversation is going around, why is it okay? Or why is it not okay? Yeah. And it starts the conversation, man. So I think what you're doing right now is powerful.
Well, and I've gotten pushback, somebody on Facebook or whatever. How dare you, after watching a TEDx, how dare you make fun of mental illness people? And I in comedy, Dave, there's a rule. You can make fun, and you've covered it. You can make fun of any group to which you belong. And I have 2 mental illnesses, so I'm double qualified, card carrying, crazy person. So that gives me liberty. Now, if I was neuronormal and was doing the kind of jokes I'm doing, I would be, I'd never get away with it. But because I said, if you're black, you can get away with black jokes. If you're gay, you can get away with gay. If you're Hispanic, you can talk about Hispanics. Any group you belong to. But I do get the occasional pushback on you shouldn't be making fun. Well, I'm not making fun of mental illness. I'm poking fun at myself, generally, or other people who, like the woman who said, just give me some bullet points. But yeah, it's there is pushback. And I was on campus at University of Montana Billings. They said, Frank, comics comedians have trouble on campus because people get offended really easy nowadays. Yeah, some comics won't play colleges anymore for that reason. Are you worried about that? I go, if I was doing the comedy circuit on college campuses, I would be worried. But I'm here talking about suicide prevention. So here's my feeling. F them.
That's right, because the people that are going to relate to you are the ones that need to hear it anyway.
Yeah, so may save a life. Yeah. I don't care whose toes I step on.
Yeah, that's good.
If we can save a life, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry you get your feelings hurt. Or they got butt hurt, but we may have saved a life. Because again, people come up almost every time somebody comes up and they're struggling with something.
That's good, man. And I appreciate the fact that we're able to take. It is such a heavy topic, and in some people's minds, such a dark topic, and talk about it in a way that it does normalize it and makes it a conversation that people are willing to partake in, or at least listen to, so that they can.
Yeah, it makes it digestible. Yeah. And that's why they hire me. They hire me because I've got lived experience, because I teach the QPR, question, persuade, refer, and because I'm a comedian. They realize that it's going to be a lot easier on the audience if we can make them laugh a little bit along the way. And there's a psychological principle. If you tell somebody something really serious and whatever, and you give them a little comic relief, it prepares them for the next serious piece mentally. So they can handle the next serious piece better if they put a little comic, it's like a sherbet, clear the palate and go on to the next difficult piece. So that's why I get hired.
No, that's good. And the other reason you get hired is simply because you're able to bring so much epic truth. And I told
Yeah.
you that before we started recording that I wrap up. I'm not going to say end because there's more I want to say, but we wrap up these conversations oftentimes by me asking for people's mic drop moment. And the way that you got your mic set up, I'm not going to ask you to rip your headphone off and throw it because that just gets messy. But assume you've got a mic like the one I've got or the one that you're used to holding in the nightclubs where you say, okay, this is my finale. This is my last joke. This is my last thing that I want to leave with the audience so they remember my message. What is your mic drop moment for all of this?
I put it in my fourth TED Talk. I didn't know the impact it was going to have. I thought it'd be impactful, but I didn't know it was going to be as impactful as it was. There's people who are neuronormal don't really understand the struggle that people who are mentally ill deal with every day, how difficult it is to get out of bed every day. And it's sort of like the Greek character Sisyphus, who gave fire to humans. So his punishment was he had to roll a rock up a hill every day, and it would get near the top at the end of the day and then roll back down. And every day he'd have to roll it up the hill, and sure enough, at the end of the day, it would roll back down. So having a mental illness is like that. You wake up every morning, and right there by your bed is a rock, and there's a hill. Some days the rock is small and the hill's not so steep. Some days the rock is huge and the hill is Everest. But every day there's a rock and a hill. So my job, the reason I speak, my purpose, my passion, is to make sure that everybody hears the sound of my voice. When they wake up the next morning, they can still move the rock.
Boom.
Mic drop.
You nailed it. You got it.
Yeah. Well, can I tell you another one, a visual one that I've used several times? I did a showcase, and one person in the U.S. dies every 11 minutes by suicide. So what I had them do was, instead of a PowerPoint presentation, I just had them put a countdown clock on both screens. And when I step on stage, the countdown clock starts down from 11 minutes. And I said to the audience, every year in the United States, 47,000 people die by suicide. That's one every 11 minutes. And I turn to the clock and I go, that means at this moment in this country, somebody someplace in my tribe has less than 11 minutes to live. That's my why. And then I let it go down. They're watching me. They're watching the clock. They're watching me. They're watching the clock. And when it gets down to about 30 seconds, I go, the good news is you can make a difference. You can save a life. You can do it oftentimes by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here, starting a conversation before their time runs out. And the tech guy stops the clock at like 7 seconds, which drives home the point. It's serious. It's happening every 11 minutes, but we can do something about it.
That's right. That's good. Wow, that's powerful. And just in the time that we've been doing this conversation, it's been a little bit more than, it's been like 33 minutes. So think about that.
3 people have died.
Yeah. While we've been sitting here having this conversation, 3 people have died. And our hope is those of you that are listening to this and watching this will take this and you'll intercede on somebody else's behalf so that in 11 minutes we can take a pause and then in 11 minutes we can take another pause, because who knows who that person is that's having those thoughts right now. That's good.
Yeah. My goal is to work myself out of a job. Frank, we'd love to have you, but nobody's dying by suicide anymore.
Right.
Great.
No, that's good. That's good. So people listening to this are going to be relating to this and saying, wow, I need to bring him in. I need to talk to him. I need to get this conversation started either in my workplace or my home or my church or wherever the case may be. How do people find you?
They can go to my website is thementalhealthcomedian.com, thementalhealthcomedian. And if you, all my social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the mental health comedian. Let me give you my phone number, my cell phone number, because I tell my audiences, look, if you're suicidal, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you're just having a really bad day, call a crazy person, because they're not going to be judgmental. They're not going to should all over. You should do this. You should do that. They're just going to listen. So my cell is 858-405. That's 858-405-5653. And, occasionally somebody will call. I got one a couple of weeks ago, and the guy goes, oh, man, I can't believe this is your real cell phone number. I go, how mean would that be? How bad would the karma be to put a cell phone number? I said, you know what I could do? I could do this. Have it pick up. Hold, please. And then the on hold music is another one bites the dust, and another one gone, and another one gone.
That's awful and so funny at the same time.
I know. That's the kind of joke I can't always share with normal people, because they're like, what? Oh God. Oh Lord. Yeah. So
Wow.
that, yeah, I think I mentioned we got a book coming out on men's mental health because 8 out of 10 people who die by suicide nowadays are men. It's called Guts, Grit, and the Grind. Guts, Grit, and the Grind. And it'll be released on March 1st, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I'm going to voice the audio version of it because I voice books. And it's basically stories of men, by men, for men, because men tend to take advice from men mentoring men, because men, my wife will tell you, she give me a great idea, I'd poo-poo it. If the mailman told me the same thing, I'm all over it. So it's a book about men, for men, by men, in hopes that a guy would flip open and find somebody's problem, a guy with his problem. Let's see how the guy's coping, because that's basically the story. Things are good, things go bad, here's how I'm coping. That's the purpose of the book, is to.
Sounds genius. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll have all of those contacts, including your phone number, in the show notes here.
Yeah.
So people can reach out to you and connect, whether it's individually, one-on-one, or if they're looking for something bigger to help save other people and to start the conversation. So
I'll take a booking, Dave.
Okay, done. We'll see what we can do for sure. Absolutely. So if you're listening to this, reach out. Reach out to your loved ones, and reach out to Frank here so that other loved ones can be saved. If you don't feel comfortable starting the conversation, you just heard from somebody that's willing to start the conversation on your behalf.
Well, you know what I do, Dave, is guy came up to me at a chamber event. I spoke on something else. He goes, they introduced you as a mental health comedian. What does that mean? I said, well, I speak on suicide prevention, depression, whatever. And he goes, my wife, stay-at-home mom, 2 kids, lives with depression, medicated, but, it's still tough. Do you have any suggestions? I go, yeah. Watch my first TEDx talk. It's called A Matter of Laugh or Death. Matter of Laugh or Death. But you watch it with her, so that she will see what I'm doing, and you will hear from somebody who has similar thoughts as her, or she does, how her mind works. So they're sitting there, and he's watching her watching me. And finally, at the end, she turns to him and she goes, I had no idea that people, A, talked about that out loud, because she was very secretive about it, and B, they did it on YouTube. That's going to go up around the world. She's now in our little crazy coffee clutch, because she comes in and she can let it take off her game face for an hour and be with us and share her feelings, good or bad or indifferent. And so that's what I advise people. And it will give the neuronormal person perspective on what the person with depression is going through and why they think the way they do.
That's genius. That's awesome. So yeah,
that's why I do them.
All of those things will be listed. So when you put down your phone, your device, your TV, however you're listening to this, go down and actually read the show notes here. Bookmark some of those links to the TED Talk, to the website. Put the phone number in your phone. You never know.
You never know.
And start the conversation. Frank, thank you so much for giving up your time to have this talk today. I guarantee it is helping somebody. It is saving somebody. It is going to help with push the conversation forward and normalize what so many of us feel like isn't normal, which is a huge step.
Yeah, there's one guy came up to me at a Christmas party where I was just doing comedy. He goes, I want to thank you for your TED Talk. I said, well, you watched my TED Talk? He goes, yeah. I watched it, and then I sat my wife down to watch it with me. And you know the story about my car breaking down, get it fixed, buy a new one, I could just kill myself? When it got to that point in my story, she turns to him and goes, oh my God, I thought that was just you. She thought it was just some kind of, like freaky thing with him alone. And when she hears me say that out loud, it changed their relationship. She all of a sudden realized he's not just a freak. This is a thing. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's the power of a TED Talk like that.
That's it. Well, again, I appreciate you. You are doing awesome things out there. I appreciate you embracing the newfound platform that you've got right now, and not just serving yourself, but serving others in the process.
Wrapping my arm around the darkness.